Hi everybody, I thought I'd try something a little bit different today and do a voiceover instead of just straight music all the way through. So I'm going to walk you through my process to do this painting. So as you can see, I tore off a piece of wax paper. I like to use it on the side for mixing colors, and in case I use a brayer, it's always good to smooth it down and use and just have it available to use. So right now I am just, as you can see, brayering on some titanium white. I already had, these are going on to dry layers. There's a layer of black gesso and then maybe 4 or 5 different layers of oil and cold wax that I've allowed to dry for a couple weeks. The colors on my palette, right there, I'm mixing up a Charvin Lagoon blue, which is a gorgeous color, and I'm mixing it with 50-50 oil and cold wax, so 50% oil paint and 50% cold wax. And the rest of the colors on the palette are probably Gamblin. We're looking at a Payne's gray, a titanium white, that looks like Cobalt teal, and then I think that's Manganese blue hue, because regular manganese is really, really expensive, and I'm not quite there yet. And then I have Ivory black. It looks like a Gamblin Cadmium green and a Quin Magenta. And then that blue that's at the very bottom is actually a mixture of probably the Payne's gray, just a touch, with the Ivory black and the Lagoon blue. And I'm guessing I probably threw in some of that Cobalt as well. Cobalt teal, that is. So right now I'm just smoothing out that brayered layer and trying to add in a little bit of depth with the Cobalt, bringing in some of that color. That is a spritz of Gamsol, which is made by Gamblin, and it's a solvent, so if you let it sit for a little bit of time, it will, and then you scrape off, you'll be able to reveal some of the lower layers, and some of the colors will start to come through and give your painting a lot more depth. And then here I am just smoothing out more of that black. And this is probably like the middle stage of the painting. Like the under layers that I let dry, those are a lot of fun because you're not really thinking about anything other than just having fun and a good time and playing around with the paint and just like letting your emotions speak to you, being intuitive, just let it all come out. Here it starts to get a little bit more focused. You're starting to think about what the composition might be. Right now I'm mixing some more of that real pale cobalt teal, just to have a little bit of a gradient there. And that tool that I'm using is my favorite of all time. It's by FX Effects. It's their spatula blades. They come in like a pack of 3, or you can buy them individually, but I think I'm gonna have to replace this 1-inch pretty soon because it's starting to get just a little bit warped at the end. But I've been using this sucker for months now and pretty regularly, so it's withheld, pretty heavy use. But I love it. It's such a fun tool to use. Just really smoothing out that corner, letting it speak to me. I needed a little more contrast there. So now I'm going into that upper right corner, I'm building on the colors up there. So here I was thinking I wanted more of like an orangey kind of color, and this turned out a little more on the coral side, not quite what I was going for, but it worked. It made, more of a purple when it blended in with the blue in that corner, which was nice. So then I added yellow, and I thought I was going to blend it into an orange, but nope, I'm just using that more as an accent against that red Shiva Oilstik and that Quin Magenta. I hope I blend it in soon though, because it's really kind of bothering me just sitting there. Going back in, doing a little bit more line work with that mini skewer. They're kind of like toothpicks, to be honest, but you can buy them in like the kitchen section of your grocery store. So going back into that corner, blending in that blue with that black. And taking the green back a little bit as well, so it's not quite as prominent. I let the paint dictate where some of the line work is going to go. In this case, I felt like that corner just needed a little more interest, so I went back in with the skewer and just followed the lines of where the paint went down and gave it a little bit more detail. Adding a little more contrast with that black. And then blending it down. And this is sped up pretty, extensively. So you can see I'm not the fastest painter in the world. I'm pretty methodical. Although this for me is very expressive and intuitive, and just letting the will of the painting or my inner thoughts and emotions kind of dictate what colors go down where, but I do tend to take my time. It's therapeutic for me, which is what I need. And art heals, It's fun to get lost in your paintings in the process. And here I probably got interrupted by somebody and left the room. Or the dog came in and I wanted to just give him a little pet. Or her, whichever one came in. I like to do a lot of finger blending. And that's why I wear the glove on my hand, because, even though paints are definitely less toxic than they were 100 years ago, some of these are still, they're pretty toxic. So it's good to be on the safe side. A little more blending. Oh good, I'm finally blending that yellow. It was bothering me. Like I said, I love that tool. I use it a lot. Now, I have a 36 by 36 inch painting that I have the first few layers are down, but I guarantee I probably won't be using that tool much in that piece. Bigger painting, bigger tools. Adding a little more depth into that red. Kind of wish I had a bright pop of orange in there, but I don't know. Can always go back in. Digging out a little bit of the line work. Oh good, that corner was bothering me too. So blending that out. I did like that line work though, so I didn't want to lose that. So here, I love in acrylic paintings, like when people use like bright splotches of color, and it's a little bit harder and trickier to achieve with oil and cold wax. But so I'm trying it here with like a mixture of Gamsol, like probably about a tablespoon of Gamsol with just a little bit of that Quin Magenta, and thinning it down so that I could take a paintbrush and just tap it against the back of my hand and make some paint splatters. So here we go. And yeah, it's giving the effect that I wanted, except I had that big blob in the middle, which was unfortunate, but it happens. Trying to let go of perfect. All right, so here I'm going back in. You just fix it, scrape it out, or you could let it dry and go back in and scrape it out. I love using pan pastels to just pull out a little bit more of the accent color on the focal point that I'm trying to achieve. So into that red magenta center point, I'm using a red and a magenta pan pastel. I'm just scraping a little bit of the pigment just to give it a little bit more depth and interest and texture. And then I press it down with the brayer because we can't let loose pigment just sit there because it's going to fly all over the place. Even though the paint is fairly wet, it's good just to press it down so it's not gonna leave your surface. A little bit more blending, tiny bit more detail work, and yeah, I think we're done. What I learned while painting this painting. So I learned it's fun to use an oil pigment stick as your focal color and then build color around it. I generally like to use R&F pigment sticks, but in this case I opted to try a different one, which is the Shiva brand. And I was quite happy with it. It's a little bit harder in consistency than the R&F, which tends to be a little bit more on the buttery side, but both can be used to make terrific marks for your paintings. The next thing that I learned is that thinning down paint with solvent is one way to be able to create paint splatters with oil paint. It's a little bit trickier than, say, making splatters with mediums and acrylic, but I want to practice a little bit more the different techniques to be able to do things like paint splatters. And I hope you like this voiceover. Let me know in the comments if you want more videos like these, or maybe you prefer the music, which is fine too. Just let me know. And lastly, just keep practicing and creating. And thanks for joining me while I made this painting. Until next time.